water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Only the Avatar, master of all four elements, could stop them. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. 100 years passed and my brother and I discovered the new Avatar, an airbender named Aang. And although his airbending skills are great, he has a lot to learn before he's ready to save anyone. But I believe Aang can save the world.
Oh my god, we're doomed. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Avatar Vlogs. This is episode 20, The Siege of the North Part 2, and this is the season finale of Book 1, Water. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, this collectively with the first part, what used to be my favorite episode growing up with this show, and another little bit of a story about that. Every time I would try and rewatch this show, first of all, it had a very odd programming block. It would air, at least when I was watching it, it would air at 6 p.m. and then at 12 a.m. So when I really got into the show, I would watch it at 6 a.m. And then I would sneak up late at night to watch the 12 a.m. bit. And I did this for a long time, and it did kind of affect my sleep schedule at school, but I don't care. I love the show. But the very first time I tried to cycle through this show, whenever we got to this episode, I always was off doing something else. So I would always watch part 1, but I would never watch part 2. And given how part 1 ends on such a cliffhanger, as a kid, I was going nuts. I'm like, what's going to happen to Aang and Zuko? And so years later, of course, I finally saw it for the first time. And yeah, another just great episode. Again, probably the best animation, pacing, action that this show's gotten to this far. So taking off from the last episode, the Fire Nation is continuing their attack on the Northern Water Tribe. Aang has been abducted, and now the remaining parts of Team Avatar have to go find him before him and Zuko freeze to death in a blizzard. On that note, given how the sun rose in the last episode, I don't really know how the front part of the Northern Water Tribe is sunny, and then the back part is a full blizzard. I guess this must truly take place in Canada, because these two neighboring zones have completely different weather patterns, even though they're just feet apart. I don't know. Bit of a nitpick, but it's something that always kind of struck me as dramatically convenient. So yeah, the Fire Nation's continuing their attack, and Aang is in the spirit world trying to seek out the ocean and the moon, only to be told that they don't live in the spirit world anymore. They crossed over into the mortal plane, and he has to seek out the advice and help from a spirit known as Ko in order to find out where they are. So Aang is on the hunt for the spirits, and it turns out that Zhao has figured out long ago that the moon is in fact a mortal living being, and he intends to annihilate it so as to secure his victory at the Northern Water Tribe. So yeah, there's a lot at stake here and a lot going on, and this episode just completely delivers. Any misgivings I might have had about the previous episode with the pacing is completely rectified here. Just this episode is fantastic. There's just so much going on. Like they basically they almost condensed the entirety of like the Return of the King in terms of epic scale into a tight 24-minute package. This episode is great. Not only does it feature some excellent action, some excellent animation, and, great acting. This is not the first time we've technically seen the spirit world, but it's the first time Aang has been in the realm of the spirit world, and I really love the look of this place. The spirit world over the length of the Avatar franchise has changed a little bit. In this instance, it's kind of like a mangrove forest. Like if you go to a tidal, kind of in a rainforest where it meets the ocean, sort of to speak, where it's very wet and it's almost a swamp, but not quite a swamp. The color scheme's a little bit off, and the spirits can range from all sorts of things. They can be people, they can be sentient animals, they can be abominations, which we'll talk about in a second. But the spirit world is always a cool place, and it creates this great sense of otherworldliness and uncertainty for Aang. And yeah, I always love the stuff with the spirit world. We get to see Heibai again, the panda from episode 7. And I will say, I love when the first time Aang goes to the spirit world, the first thing he encounters is this monkey trying to meditate, and the monkey's just a complete dick. The monkey just says, "Go away." And then, kind of in a nod to Legend of Zelda, he points to a light and says, "Go, chase it." So Aang will just leave him alone. But Aang eventually comes across a spirit named, I can talk, a spirit known as Ko, who's known as the Face Stealer, because if you encounter him and you show any emotion, he will steal your face. Now, I will admit, when I was younger, I found Ko to be excessively creepy. First, the design of this thing is pretty cool. It's like it's got like a centipede body and then a spot in its body to showcase its faces. Because Ko doesn't have a true face, it cycles through a lot of faces. Though I will admit, they could have redesigned how it transfers faces, because I'm not going to give it away, but the design of this thing is a little suspicious. That's all I'm going to say, and I'm not going to use the terminology, but let's just say every time it changes faces, I'm kind of thinking, oh, that's suspicious. Star Trek the Motion Picture kind of gave you influence, didn't it? And on top of that, it's a creepy idea, but every time he tries to be creepy or jump scare you, it reminded me of that scene in the original Spider-Man movie where Peter's having a dream about the Goblin, and the Goblin just goes, "Rah!" And you're like, was I supposed to be scared by that? Because I'm not. I'm not scared. The reveal that the moon and ocean spirits are the koi fish in the meditation pond from the last episode, even though that's a little obvious, as a kid, I always thought that was a really good twist, and I think it's good here. And I'm trying to think if there's much else to say. Yeah, the climax of this episode is just absolutely fantastic. Not only do we get to see some really good waterbending animation, I'll say this too, I had a bit of a misgiving with the waterbending master, where the shots of the Northern Water Tribe at day didn't look nearly as good as the night shots. These last 2 episodes more than made up for it. Like, every part of this water tribe looks great. I love how, even though you do have an idea for how the city is laid out, every time they do a new angle, it's kind of like you're seeing a new part of it. So I really like that aspect of it. The city looks great. The action looks great. And even though it's kind of done in service of saving money on the animation, when the sky goes red for a while, or when the moon is completely taken out of the equation and it goes kind of gray and white, it is very effective. You do really feel the sense of dread in these scenes. Plus, even when they do go gray and white for the lack of a moon, they still have those subtle little bits of color when someone uses firebending to light up the scene. I thought, okay, that is brilliant. That is attention to detail that lesser shows would not bother to have. So I thought that was really good. Zuko we get another, not really an insight into Zuko's backstory, but there is a line he says that I do kind of love, where he talks about his sister and how she's just the loved one of his family. And he says, "My father says my sister was born lucky and says I was lucky to be born." I'm like, on one hand, that's kind of an obvious emo-ish line, but the more I think about it, it is a really good line. It's simple wordplay, but it does really work. And with that said, I almost wish I could just show you the whole episode, because there's so many great moments and great lines as this episode goes on. Not so much, it doesn't quite top itself with action toppers, but the lines after the climax is done just keep adding on top of one another, one after another. The one I will give away here, because to me it's a great scene. It's almost Tolkien-ish. I'm not going to give away entirely what happens, but Yue has to sacrifice herself. And I'll just say it, when Yue turns into the moon, chills. I'm not going to lie, that moment gave me chills. And I've seen that moment a million times. Watching it this time, I I was chilled watching it happen. It is such a good moment. And then the follow-up moment when her father is talking to Sokka, and Sokka says, "You must be proud. So proud and sad." Like, great moment. Again, this episode really is fantastic. I can't objectively say it is the best because there are kind of issues with it. Again, sometimes the pacing is a little off, and some of the exposition admittedly is thrown in very haphazardly from a writing standpoint. Like, the reveal with Yue is kind of sloppy when you get down to it, but again, I just love I love this episode, and I'm willing to buy that stuff. So yeah, it took a while, but we finally come to the closing of season 1. It ended on a high note, and I can't wait to see where it goes from there. So with that said, I'll see you in season 2. Until next time, onwards and upwards, my friends.
Iroh is a traitor, and your brother Zuko is a failure. I have a task for you.